5 points.
So this project begins over at the thickness planer, where I'm going to take some scrap maple, which I got from pallets, and I'm going to mill them down to size, and then over at the table saw, joint all the edges. The reason I'm using maple is traditionally Scrabble tiles are made from maple. Now I'm going to be cutting the pattern of the overall crossword puzzle out on the CNC onto a piece of paper. This is going to be cut out with the laser, so I can simply break off the edges and lay it over top of my pieces of wood. As I only have so much of this maple, I want to maximize yield and not have as much scrap. So with the boards laid out and the paper template placed on top, I can see exactly where things are going to end up on the CNC machine. So I noticed at the ends it needed a little bit cut off and added, so I just take that piece and add it to both ends. Now that everything is laid out and looking good, I can come back with a Sharpie, and all the seams between the pieces of wood, I'm just going to put a mark. That way it's very easy and bulletproof to line this up during glue up. So for the glue up, I only applied glue to one side of the boards, making sure that I don't put glue where it's unnecessary, boards that are just kind of hanging out the sides. Otherwise I'm going to end up gluing the clamp to the board. Now applying glue to just the one side should be plenty enough. There should still be lots of squeeze out on the top and bottom. No need to do both sides. Before I fully tighten down the clamps, I make sure to press down and make sure everything's flat. And after the glue is cured for about 15 minutes, I can use a chisel to just scrape off the excess on the top. Now that the glue is dry, I can take it out of the clamps, flip it over, and use a chisel to scrape off the hard and dry glue. After that, I use some 60 grit sandpaper to knock off some more high spots with the glue that's left over from the back. I can then lay the paper template on top of this and mark out the locations of where my tie-down screws are going to go to attach it to the CNC machine. I now put one screw in and use the router on the Y-axis to follow one of the glue lines to make sure that this stock is parallel with the CNC itself. After the stock has been secured with the remaining screws, I bring the router over to my home location, which is the origin point, and I can get ready to run my first code. The first operation is a facing operation with a 3/4 inch flat bit. Now as you can see, this left a lot of burn marks, and it actually kind of pushed the router out of place, missing a bunch of steps. And this is due to the fact that this bit was insanely dull, so I just kind of came back and manually controlled it, cleaning up everything in order to get ready for the rest of the operations. I then did a light sanding with 60 grit just to kind of knock down some of the high spots if there were any, and then installed the V-groove bit in the router as to cut out the engravings on all the letters. And then once the letters were done, it went around and put a chamfer on all the edges and the lines separating the tiles. I then installed a 1/4 inch spiral down cut bit in order to cut out the perimeter shape and the interior piece as well, leaving only the tabs in place. I then gave it a light sanding before removing it. Then I took out all the screws and it simply popped out, all the tabs broke off, and gave it another light sanding on the back. Over at the assembly table, I can give it a proper sanding to remove all the burn marks. I then used some black acrylic paint to paint in all the letters and numbers on the Scrabble tiles, as traditionally this is the way it's done. It's okay to be a little sloppy here with the paint, as we're going to come back when it's dry with a sander and remove all the extra paint, and this is going to leave a super crisp edge. After all the sanding's done, I blow it off with a leaf blower, flip it over, and attach a clamp as a straight edge. I've got a keyhole bit in the router, and this is going to create a slot in order to hang it on the wall with a screw or nail later. I can then install 3 screws in the back to act as spacers to keep it off the table as I apply finish. I went with a water-based polyurethane, 1 coat on the back, 1 coat on the front brushed on, but this was really time consuming trying to get all the little bubbles out, so I decided to go with spraying for the second coat, and this came out great. It took only about a minute to spray the whole thing. After I let this cure for about a day, it's ready to wrap up and give as a present to my mom for her birthday.
Oh, I have
Did Daddy make it? Or did you make it?
Daddy.
Your mommy made it. That's why.